When there are no sardines for 2 or 3 days, the whole population of Saint Louis is penalized. There are no big fish that we can afford to buy, only sardines. And with the new fishing treaty, it will even be worse when they start fishing our little sardines too.
Ce sera plus difficile quand ils vont pêcher leurs sardines.
One after the other, coastal communities and fishermen disappear, vanquished. The high seas fishing wars are won every day by the industrial fleets. Their only real plan is profit. Fast profit, profit at any price.
I don't cry for myself. I cry for my children and grandchildren, because tomorrow they won't have enough resources to feed themselves. And if the ocean has no more resources, what are we going to do? We will go to the cemetery and we will wait for you.
Throughout the food war, rich nations colonize whole countries in order to obtain food supplies at low cost. 2,000 years ago, the Maya, builders of temples, grew corn to feed themselves. This vital link with the land has remained intact. Like their ancestors, the Indians of the Chiapas in Mexico are known as the corn people. They live a modest and difficult life. Proud, they have been able to resist the onslaughts of history. Today they may lose everything as their land is coveted by a new generation of conquerors. The Indians find themselves at the heart of the turmoil. They're engaged in an unequal combat with those who want their land. Here, the food war is fought by people who have taken up arms. Tens of thousands of Mexican troops patrol the Chiapas region, imposing the law of a new economic order. In 1994, Mexico, the United States, and Canada signed NAFTA, a treaty regulating free trade in North America. Thus began the era of free trade in North America. NAFTA and free trade have intensified the food war. Indians feared their standard of living would deteriorate. Time proved them right. 8 years after the signature of the agreement, 80% of the Mexican population is poorer. The price of a tortilla, a daily staple and often the only food for 40 million Mexicans, has doubled. The small farmers are headed for ruin. The Indians claim their right to feed themselves, as they have done for thousands of years. The food war takes place on two fronts: the fight for the land and the fight for food. Thanks to NAFTA and to their industrial superiority, big American food companies have taken over the corn market, which allows them to get rid of their surplus grain production. Mexico, which used to be self-sufficient, must now import corn to feed its population. According to this logic, the Mexicans should select crops that have a commercial value on the North American market. Jorge Sandiego is the coordinator of DESMI, an agency which supports and helps the development of Indian communities in the Chiapas. Mr. Sandiego, who has already been imprisoned for his humanitarian actions, is preoccupied by the inevitable impact of the changes.
The fundamental thing for the small farmers is the modification of Article 27 of the Mexican Constitution, a modification that is very crucial for the multinational companies. The deeds would allow agribusiness to take over, thus transforming the methods of local production.
Around the world, agribusiness is gobbling up the small farmers' lands. In this context, the traditional farmers must be eliminated.
They often repeat that hope is not dead. They say, they can kill us. They have already killed a lot of us. But hope is still alive.
From the banks of the Amazon to the beaches of Rio, Brazil is synonymous with paradise, escape, and wealth. A large territory with amazing natural resources and a young population of 170 million people, Brazil is the country of the future. Yet the food war is more intense here than anywhere else. These buildings, surrounded by barbed wire and watchtowers, belong to powerful landlords who own huge facilities where soya is treated and dried. In order to supply these factories, the land has been transformed into a huge green sea, a monoculture of soya. The food-producing plants for local sustenance have been eliminated, so were the farmers. In the south, like in the north, the fazendeiros receive, often free of charge from the government, pieces of land as large as countries. Thus, in just a few years, the immense Amazonian forest has been transformed into a vast pasture for cattle. Meanwhile, millions of small farmers, deprived of land, are desperately looking for a place to settle down. Many have fled the faziendas where they were employed. Those farmers only want a piece of land to feed themselves. In 1996, in El Dorado dos Carayas, the military police and the big fazendeiros decided to set an example. That day, the police fired on an unarmed crowd. 19 landless farmers were killed, 70 others were badly wounded. A modest building reminds us of the slaughter. After a trial of 6 years, and despite a few convictions, the people responsible for the killings are still free. Henri Burin-Desrosiers is a lawyer. With the Pastoral Commission of the Earth, he tries to alert worldwide public opinion and to have those guilty of the crimes convicted. He doesn't hesitate to speak of a regime of slavery.
Why is this type of work slavery? Because the workers are no longer free, not even free to get out or to leave the fazenda. They're not paid. They're isolated in the forest. They don't know anything. And sometimes, the ones that try to escape, unfortunately, we have seen many cases. Sometimes the pistoleros kill them or capture them and bring them back in chains to the fazenda they fled. We have seen this happening lately. So this is a regime of slavery.
Thousands of farm workers who escape the clutches of the fazendeiros have nowhere to go. Their only choice is to settle on abandoned land. Jose Batista is also a lawyer for the PCE. He tries to come to their aid despite the threat of violence.
Se a gente for olhar bem o número de trabalhadores que foram assassinados aqui nessa região nos últimos